Welcome to EPG Pathashala. I am Dr. S. Samba, retired Deputy Director, Central Leather Research Institute, Chennai. This module relates to information related legislation and in particularly issues of censorship as it affects library and information science personnel and centers. Censorship is a very often discussed topic in not only in the library and information science centers, but in society at large. It has so many ramifications in our activities. I will not be able to go through all of them, so I will briefly touch upon it as it affects the philosophy of librarianship and activities of the library and information science personnel. Please go through the references given as well as other websites which deal with censorship issues. So, this is a very brief introduction to censorship vis-a-vis the library and information centers. First, let us look at what is censorship. It is defined by the American Library Association as the suppression of ideas and information that certain persons, individuals, groups or government officials find objectionable or dangerous. So, please look at this. It is not just the government, but groups, individuals can find objectionable. Second, it is used to prevent and control the creation, access and dissemination of ideas. Third, censorship issues generally go against the very philosophy and ethos of librarianship, which believes that information is for all. And if you look at Dr. Ranganathan's laws of librarianship, every book its reader and every reader his book, you will understand why I am mentioning this. So, let us go and now let us go to what some of the international and national organizations have to say about censorship. Freedom of expression and the right to know are cornerstones of a true democracy, and library and information science personnel play a crucial role in this. Freedom of expression and the right to know are cornerstones of a true democracy, and library and information science personnel play a crucial role. The fundamental ethos of librarianship is to make information available to all without discrimination, but this is at odds with censorship. At this juncture, it would be nice to remember Dr. Ranganathan's laws of library science, where he says every reader his book and every book his reader. Before we proceed further, let us look at what IFLA has to say about library, about censorship relating to libraries. IFLA supports, defends and promotes intellectual freedom as defined in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. IFLA considers freedom of expression and right to know, about which I mentioned, as the two aspects of the same principle of commitment to intellectual freedom, and that library and information science centers should take steps to acquire materials that reflect the plurality and diversity of society. IFLA has set up a committee called the Committee on Freedom of Access to Information and Freedom of Expression, whose mission statement is given on their website. The most proactive in the area of censorship is the American Library Association, which set up the Office of Intellectual Freedom and which has brought out a Library Bill of Rights, which it reaffirmed in 1996. Similarly, library institutes and associations in various countries have spoken strongly about freedom of access to information. The National Coalition Against Censorship was founded in 1974, and it is an alliance of 50 American non-profit organizations consisting of literary, artistic, religious, educational and civil liberties groups. So, please go through the website to look at what they have to say about freedom of expression and censorship. Now, who practices censorship? Has been practiced by various groups. Now, this comes into there correctly. Okay? Various groups such as religious groups to prevent heresy or blasphemy, moralists who are worried about pornographic literature, racists who want to maintain the existing status quo, governments in the interests of security and so on, or even sometimes against literature which may not be suitable for children. All this is listed in the module. Therefore, the reasons for censorship include political, social, religious, racist, moral, security concerns, inappropriateness for certain age groups, and use of inappropriate or inflammatory or indecent language. All this may be censored. There are two types of censorship. One is the regulative censorship. What is regulative censorship? When a regulatory organization such as a government dictates what information can be available in the public domain. Therefore, library and information science personnel have to keep abreast of the various laws and rules during collection development and while facilitating access, because these laws and rules have a bearing on what is available, what should be made available. Yeah. Constitutive censorship takes place when information, thoughts and ideas that violate social norms and values of a group are suppressed because of sociological processes. For instance, library and information science person may take initiative in censoring materials acquired or in preventing access to certain information because it violates the values of the group which uses the library or which funds the library. When the library and information personnel take the initiative in censoring materials, it can be termed to be self-censorship. Self-censorship has been defined as control of what you say or do in order to avoid annoying or offending others, but without being told officially that such a control is necessary. Why do we do this? Why do the personnel do this? They may do it to avoid trouble or controversy, to avoid offending the regular users, to keep up with community standards, to protect themselves against potential threats or legal repercussions, and to subconsciously we may do it because we have some ingrained moral values because of the society to which we belong. So, there is what is called as covert censorship in common library practices. These have all been explained in detail in the module, please go, and in the references given at the end of the module. So, let me just look at a few of them. Vendor bias. We may review journals may be biased in favor of large publishing houses, or periodical selection may be because of citation rates, or because of funding from, because of pressure which we get from funding bodies. I also already mentioned self-censorship and the reasons there. Sometimes alternative literature which is not found in the mainstream can also be censored, or we may not take steps to procure them or make them access. Cataloging and labeling. We may not catalog in depth so as to prevent others from accessing such material, cataloging or indexing such materials. These can all be practiced by the librarian very covertly, or keep the material away from the reach, put them in a hard to find place. So, all this we should be aware of when we do it. Are we doing such things? So, then I must talk about some activity which has taken place historically for a long time, maybe from time immemorial. One is the Libricide, whereas the practice of destroying books or other materials which offend or not in sync with the ideas, ethos or beliefs of a particular group, or which are thought to be subversive. It is generally done in public. We talked about libraries, we have talked about Libricide. Nalanda University Library, which was burnt, is a major issue. So, is a major incident of such Libricide. Recently, a publisher withdrew books from his shelf and pulped it, so that destroyed the books and not made it available to the library. All the examples, the too many examples, I have mentioned many of them in the module. Please go through the module to look at the examples and where such things have been practiced, both in pre-independent India as well as in independent India. The New York Library Association has a checklist on its website which library and information science personnel can go through to identify whether they are practicing censorship or not in the library. access to the internet is another activity of every information center today. So, we must develop policies regarding access and use of the internet. The Children Internet Protection Act of the United States deals with the access to internet for children. So, please go through that is and see what they have to say. Meanwhile, we can have control of the internet. It is a type of censorship anyway, through content control software and use of filters. We have what are called as browser based filters, software on proxy servers, client side filters, content filters, and so on. The filters can be at the network level or on the individual workstation or at the individual workstation. So, please go through all what has been given here. Take this in conjunction with your modules dealing with computers, dealing with digital libraries, and then together you will be able to form a better picture. But what I have to say now is, when we do this, we need to look at overblocking when content that is not meant to be censored is filtered out, underblocking when material to be censored passes through the filter. So, please look at this in relation to the policies and guidelines drawn up by your organization, because every filtering, any censorship should be based on the policies and guidelines of the parent organization, and it should also, if they do not have policies and guidelines, the Library and Information Center should develop policies and guidelines. So, when we talk of access to the internet in the library, it could be partial in the sense that certain materials may be made available when children's section of the library closed down. So, these are things that the Library and Information Science personnel can look at. Now, we come to, there are various aspects of censorship which Library and Information Science personnel will have to consider during the course of their official duties. Whether or not to fight censorship depends on many factors on the situation at the time, but all associations, Library and Information Science associations, are against censorship in any form whatsoever. So, please go through these association websites and form your policy guidelines based on them, and convince the organization why there should be no need for censorship in an information setup. We will also have to use our judgment on a case to case basis and have to prevail upon professional bodies and association to address these issues. If our professional bodies have not done so, we should try to prevail upon them to address this issue, because it is something which affects all the information centers across the world. Thank you.